The merge has arrived! Welcome back to Analytical Strategy, where we have reached episode 13 already of Australian Survivor, and yes, it's always one of the best episodes to unpack of every single season, and today it is the merge episode. There's always a lot to get through when merges happen, so let's get straight into it. So just quickly, before the merge actually took place, we did get a quick glimpse into the aftermath of the biggest move of the season so far of Simon going home with his two idols. But this really had nothing to do with him going home, it was more about who put those votes on Danny. Hayley outright explained to Danny her plan of splitting the votes in the case Simon played an idol, that she did not want Flick to go home and she was basically happy for Danny to be that backup plan. Yes, she laid it all out on the table, which does take some balls, I must say. And at this moment, she basically revealed she is the mastermind of this season. And now, for good reason, Danny wants Hayley out of this game. So this is a big reason why I probably would have preferred Hayley to just get George and Cara to put their votes on Danny last tribal. So she still would have had Danny as this collateral vote, and once Simon left, she still could have pretended to have this functioning relationship with Danny at the merge. But now Danny is in the loop of this plan. It really looks like this opening scene was setting the episode up for a Danny versus Hayley on who can rally their troops at the merge and then potentially make a play on the other. Then the merge actually happens, and firstly, it's always an amazing moment and milestone for each individual that makes it. I know if I was there and I made the merge, it would be a very emotional moment for me, so I've got to be stoked for each and every one of them, and massive congratulations to them all. So as soon as the tribes merge, the first individual reward challenge kicks off, and it's an absolute beauty. Rather than having the standard merge feast, the first person to win the challenge then gets the best choice of a heap of items on a table. Some uncovered, some covered. I absolutely love this concept, and I think it's a fantastic first merge reward basically, and a really good replacement to the standard merge feast. There's a lot of decisions that you need to make on the fly in this reward. Do you go for the food, or do you go for the covered item, assuming there is an advantage under one of the covers? But also knowing there is likely at least one dud item in there as well. All of the uncovered items went first, which is probably the smart move to play it safe. Baden ended up getting one of the dud items covered up in a boiled egg, whilst Emmett hit the jackpot with a huge jar of lollies, where I was extremely confident there would have been an advantage hidden inside that jar. Now, if anyone had seen Australian Survivor before, Shonny, I believe, got a huge jar with an advantage inside at the auction, so I thought this was an absolute no-brainer of where the advantage would be hidden. But maybe this wasn't the case. This was not revealed at all throughout the episode, so maybe this item was just a decoy. Who knows? And in classic fashion, this reward finished with Gerald, in the end, finishing off the reward with a glass of milk, which no doubt he would have picked anyway, even if he came in first place. But after the reward back at camp, they then go through some possible tribe names, such as Queen Elizabeth, Unity, but they settled on the Fire Tribe. I mean, pretty horrendous choices by all, and really of a shocker of a name in the end. But it is just a name in the end, so no big deal there. The real big deal at Merge is the numbers and where they all lie. So, there are 13 contestants left in the game. There were 6 original Brawn and 7 original Brains. However, there is more to this than the numbers on the surface, with George and Cara switching to being Brawn strong, and Hayley having Flicks back at the previous tribal council, so there was definitely a relationship there as well. But on the surface, with George and Cara as Brawns, it's looking very likely to be an 8 versus 5 alliance breakdown against the Brains. So with Hayley realising she's now on the bottom of the tribe, she decides to talk to Flick and Gerald to try and bring them across to the Brains alliance, stating they would be on the bottom of the Brawns alliance, but also in the same pitch kind of calls them goats of the Brawn alliance and calls herself a pawn in their game if they came with her. Which I don't particularly love this pitch by Hayley, to be honest, as firstly calling someone a goat is a little insulting if they do take it that way, and she's obviously not a pawn, so it's a little obvious that her long-term plan wasn't to go to the end with them, and then they would be on the bottom of the Brains. Again, I would have preferred Hayley really explaining how this would have benefited their games and their longevity in the game, which I'm sure that she did, but they probably couldn't have shown that in the edit. I personally may have also gone down the route of potentially forming a brand new alliance of 6, with 3 Brains and 3 Brawns, such as Hayley, Baden and Way, Flick, Gerald and say Chelsea, that no one would know about, and then that 6 could take over the game. It's then an even playing field for everyone in that 6 and no one would ever see it coming. But that obviously did not happen, and after minimal consideration, Flick tells Hayley straight out that she was not interested in joining her, and although she wants to work with her in the future, she just cannot at this stage of the game. I also do not love Flick telling Hayley this either, if she was going to stay with the Brawns anyway. If Flick was going to work with the Brawns and not with Hayley, she should have just told Hayley that she does want to work with her, made her feel comfortable, and then potentially taken her or another Brain out of the game easily. She could have been the double agent this episode. The comfortability factor is especially important, as you don't want a player of Hayley's caliber scrambling at all in the game of Survivor. So with all this information, Hayley seems to know exactly where she stands in the game, on the bottom in a group of 5 versus a group of 8. She also convinces her group not to sway, so the Brawns cannot split their vote, which is a really smart way to go about it. However, then there is King George, and ultimately, again, he is looking to put himself in a spot where he has all the power, all the information, and knows exactly where all the votes are going. He wants all this information, and then again he can make the best decision for him. He firstly speaks with Emmett and finds out they want to get Hayley to flush the idol, and then at this stage put the votes on Andrew, a pretty stock standard Survivor move. He then has a conversation with Hayley, where in short he says he wants to play this double agent role, keep voting with the Brawn, but give Hayley the intel of where to play her idol so a brain is safe and a big named Brawn can then go home. He's setting himself up to pull off my favourite ever Australian Survivor move made by David Gennett actually, with what David did with Matt to get Daisy out of the game in a sense. George is doing this with Hayley to get a big Brawn Alliance member out. Tell Hayley where to put the idol, George keeps the trust in the Brawns with a power player going home, and then he has all the power between both alliances. So in theory, a fantastic move by George if he can pull it off at this tribal council. So we then get to the immunity challenge, the ultimate endurance challenge, a physical and mental battle for that first individual immunity necklace. Emmett gets himself into yet another showdown this season, but this time it's not with Simon, who I'm sure would have also excelled at this challenge, but in Andrew, a real underdog, and he's had a pretty invisible edit at this stage of the season. In the end, Andrew could barely keep his arms up in the air, and Emmett wins yet another showdown and the first individual immunity necklace of this season. He's definitely one to watch in these endurance and physical challenges moving forward, and looks to be a player to really do anything to win a challenge. So after the challenge, the Brawn plan switches from Andrew to Laura, but they still want to let slip that they want Hayley out of the game to try and get her to flush her idol. They have their political meeting with a few of Emmett's lollies to make the decision to get Laura out, but as mentioned, George has other ideas. He wants to take out a Brawn member, let Hayley know where to play her idol, and play this double agent role between both alliances. Now the decision on which Brawn member to target was made much easier for George as Kez strolled right over to where she thought the merge idol could have been found. She did find it right in front of everyone, and then she kind of boasted about how she found another idol in this game. Kez, no, come on, what are you doing? If you knew where the idol may have been, you could have just gone over there when no one was around, found it, kept it a secret, but no, you found it and let everyone know about it, and in one swift movement you put a huge giant target on your back. Kez literally may have lost a game right then and there in about 15 seconds, but George's final plan was set in stone. It was letting Hayley and the Brains know that the Brawn's target was Laura, to get Hayley to play her idol for Laura. They all vote for Kez, Kez and her idol goes home, 2 idols in one swoop, that easy, a fantastic move again if George can pull this off. Hayley did not have to follow George though, and she actually had a few options. She could have listened to him, used her idol, and tried to get Kez and her idol out as well. She could have let Laura go and kept her idol in her pocket. Or she could have done a third option of maybe even blowing up George's game at Tribal Council, let everyone know of his plan, she'd probably keep her idol in the process and George would go home. I really think if she outed him at Tribal, there's a very high chance all the Brawn would have turned on him and he would be out of this game. However, at Tribal, Hayley did not throw George's name out there. She trusted in his plan, and the conversation was really about who she would play her idol on. Jonathan directed almost every question we saw in the edit at Tribal to Hayley and Kez, so there were major clues for Kez that she could be in some danger. However, this Tribal could have lasted for hours, and that's all we saw in the edit, so it's really hard to read into that overall. The 5 Brains in the end put 4 votes on Kez and 1 vote on Danny, and this was an extremely genius move, in the case that Kez played her idol for herself. I personally was really worried that Laura would be safe with Hayley's idol. Kez would have played her idol on herself and all the votes would be void, and then a revote would have occurred and Hayley would have gone home. So definitely a genius decision to put 1 vote on Danny to ensure that could not have happened. So George's plan in the end worked perfectly, and his little sign off after Kez went home of "you guessed it well, Hayley" was the icing on the cake. But did Hayley make the right decision this Tribal based on the options I mentioned before? It is a hard one to say, but I think yes, with the minority split vote, this was the correct decision. I think losing Laura could have hurt Hayley's long-term game, as Laura is basically a free vote for her at this stage. But holding onto your idol would be awfully tempting, I must admit. But ultimately, I think it was either split the minority vote as they did, or really just throw George's name out there at Tribal and see what happens to try to save your idol. One or the other would have been the right move in my mind. But in the way it all played out, she was also able to get Kez and her idol out of the game, and now she can still throw George's name under the bus next episode, so I'm keen to see if that happens and how the Brawn tribe react if she does go down that route. Now before we finish this recap up, there is one more big thing to discuss, with some rule breaking occurring, as after Kez was voted out we saw her give Flick her hidden immunity idol. Now this has to be illegal in a rule break, right? I'll be absolutely raging if Flick is allowed to use this idol correctly, and it will really open up the floodgates for future seasons. As per the rules of Survivor, if you are voted out with the possession of a hidden immunity idol, that idol is out of the game and no longer has any power. So what I'm hoping will happen is Flick will still think it's real, but in the end it has no power, so if or when she does try to play it, Jonathan will say, "This is a hidden immunity idol, but it has no power in this game." As Kez was voted out whilst in possession of it, that will be an absolutely epic moment if it happens. But if it does retain its power, that would just be a massive slip up by production, so it's something I really don't think would happen, and I'm just going to assume that it will not happen and that will not be the case. So I personally will be interested to see if production do let Flick know that this idol cannot be used, which we'll probably find out in the next episode if that is the case, and if not, if they will let her just think it's real and let her ride the wave like the surfer she is. But what a great merge episode nonetheless, with George being the real MVP overall. What a massive episode by George. Firstly, it's awesome to see him actually make the merge. I mean, if you said that to me after episode 1, and for him to be in this power position, I would have told you, you are kidding me. So a huge success to him for even being there, let alone pulling off these huge moves. So an absolutely big shout out to George. It will be really interesting to see if Hayley can rebound off playing her idol, and now she doesn't have any protection in the game, so I'm really curious to see what sort of magic she can conjure up next episode. I still really have faith in her overall. But we will see long term, but for now, that is all from Analytical Strategy for today. I'll see you tomorrow with another recap of tonight's episode. Bye for now.